What's going on out there, Roadrunners? Welcome to another episode of Around the Bird Bath. This is not your host, Dan Ernall. This is managing editor and publisher Jared Callis stepping in as the host to interview Dan for our season preview of the UTSA 2024 baseball season. Joined, of course, by our other managing editor or publisher. I don't know. We got to figure out some real titles for this now that the podcast network's expanding. But Adrian, thank you for also joining Dan and I today's episode. It's great to have the three of us all together, talk a little Roadrunner baseball.
Indeed, absolutely. It's here. It is here this week, and I think everyone's getting excited about it. It's only right that we do a proper full team effort for a baseball season preview.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are the experts, right? And this is your empire. I'm just along for the ride, and I agree with the titles. Now that Jared is sending out tax forms and whatnot, you can probably find some trademarks. And it's funny, like we were up at the 2-0 day the other day, and my wife saw something with Los Correcaminos. I know I'm butchering the actual pronunciation of that. I apologize.
Yeah, he's from Minnesota. People give him a break.
From Minnesota. But she's like, "Isn't that an Alamo Audible thing? Do y'all not have that trademarked?" I was like, "Nah, we should."
Man, she's giving away our trade secrets. Jeez.
Oh man.
No, it was somebody was wearing a bootleg Los Correcaminos shirt, and
Yeah, we're working on it.
Yeah,
I think it puts into the public record if we record on the podcast saying that we're pursuing a trademark that no one else can steal it now. So I guess we owe your wife a favor due to my laziness and inability to navigate the Texas Secretary of State website or whatever it's called.
We've had a couple of other outlets come for that Los Correcaminos, but dude, I mean, you just can't beat that beautiful varsity cursive font that Aaron Livingston has designed in the original Los Correcaminos stamp from Alamo Audible, which, by the way, this baseball season, we do have some pretty cool stuff coming out to complement the Los Correcaminos cursive. You want to look out for that.
Yeah, we also have a new sponsor on the podcast. If you guys wouldn't mind me to interject a quick ad read before we jump into the rest of the podcast. I want to say thank you to Artisan Vapor CBD, who is sponsoring this episode of the podcast, as well as all of our podcast episodes throughout the month of February. Artisan Vapor CBD has been in the game for a while. They started in 2013, well before there was a CBD shop on every corner in every city in America. Artisan Vapor was out there laying the groundwork of this industry. So they know all the vendors, they know all the best products, whether it's e-liquid, CBD, Kratom, Delta products. Artisan has it all. They've got great deals. They've got great quality. They've got 2 convenient locations just by UTSA. I think they're like 3 or 4 miles from campus, if I'm not mistaken. They're on the north side. But they are across the whole U.S. So no matter where you're at, there's probably an Artisan Vapor fairly close to you. And we just want to thank those guys for supporting us here at Alamo Audible. And I hope our listeners will check them out soon.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Whether you're a seasoned vape user or a seasoned CBD user, or you're pretty green to the industry, or maybe you're trying to put down the tobacco smoke, the nicotine smoke, maybe you're trying to drop a cigarette, switch something cleaner with the vape, Artisan Vapor is the place to go because of the expertise. If you are green, you don't know what you're doing, or maybe you think, oh man, I got this thing with my back, or I'm a little stressed out. Maybe I should try that CBD stuff, but I'm kind of scared. Go in there, you can talk to an expert, and they can set you up right.
All right, Dan, before we preview this 2024 season, I think it might be good to kind of level set a little bit, and especially for the listeners who are new to the Roadrunner baseball bandwagon. First of all, welcome. Glad to have you here. What was the 2023 season like for UTSA? I think on one hand, it was super successful, but it also may have been a little bit of disappointment. So what's your kind of high level recap of the previous season?
Yeah, it definitely started with anticipation. Listeners and supporters are well versed now in the 2022 snub, and I have to not think about the regional snub, excuse me, too much. Otherwise, my blood starts to boil and I get upset at it, and it really just doesn't make any sense at all. So they had a lot of momentum going into the 2023 season. They kind of had that super class, the whole COVID year, and trying to figure out everyone's eligibility, and a lot of guys that it's like you got all the pieces together, right? And we're going to finally make this whole thing work. And so it was not a secret that the team had 40 wins as a goal, conference championship, whether regular season tournament as a goal, regionals as a goal. And I mean, even, thinking back to like Texas A&M, and if the listeners watch the Domies, the most recent Domies, you'll see a little nod to that Texas A&M game. And Coach Schlossnagel, after trying to poach and kind of figure out where Simon Miller was, what his plans were, and trying to get Simon Miller down the road to College Station if he came back for another year of eligibility, he mentioned that was a really good team that they played, and that was a team that if things fell in the right way, they could find themselves in Omaha. Talking about the Roadrunners, fast forward now 9 months, we know that didn't happen. It was a disappointing end to the regular season, and I think it was just one of those things by the end of it where they kind of got to be a team where it seemed like they had to get the home run to get runs across. Baseball in general, it's a hard sport to put 3-4 hits together and do that inning after inning. And you need that power, and you need to be able to have that power. And they had it at times. They still hit 79 home runs as a team, but they didn't have it when they needed it, and then the offense just kind of went stagnant. And so the pitching was improved, but when you're not getting the run support, it doesn't matter if your pitching is only posting a 3 ERA for a game. If you can't put up more than 1 or 2 runs, it's going to be hard to win anyway. So some of that was injury, some of that was probably just bad baseball luck, but a disappointing finish to the season. Still a lot to be excited about. 38 wins, just 1 win shy of the program record. That Coach Hallmark is now the only coach in the 32-year history to win more than 37 games more than once, or I'm sorry, win at least 37 games more than once. 21-8 Conference USA, right there with DBU. And we're going to talk about this when we get to the AAC preview and kind of talk about 2024. But you see, when you have another program like that, that's right there at the top, and maybe they've got a little more liking in the RPI and a liking from the committee, they get a little more of the benefit of the doubt that how important those wins are. And if you lose to them, then the opportunity for regular season champ is that much harder. And, first it was Southern Miss, last year's DBU, now it's going to be East Carolina. There's always kind of one team that's sitting there, but a really good season, a lot to be excited about. Ended on a bittersweet note, and gotta imagine the 17 players that are returning that they've got to fire, and you got to think that through the fall they were telling these guys like, hey, this is what our goals are, and this is what we're working towards, and this is what we're about. And those new guys that came in, the 15 transfers and the 8 freshmen, and getting them on board and getting them thinking kind of that Hallmark mindset moving into 2024.
Yeah, with Hallmark, we're starting to see now the sustained success for this era of UTSA baseball. I think from 2021 to 2023, as I guess top 3 finishes in conference each and every single one of those years, we see the record continuing to get better year over year. And now this is the next part of that is the keeping the talent in the dugout year over year, being able to rotate the guys that are departing the program, graduating, going to the draft, or transfer somewhere else, and then new guys coming up through the ranks. And so who do we lose from the 2023 team? Who do we gain going into 2024? Personnel-wise, roster-wise, how does this team look different?
Yeah, it's a lot different. I mean, they're only returning 17 of their 40 players. Now, I do want to preface that with some of that gap is because the NCAA did increase the roster size to 40. So instead of like returning 17 of 35 players or 32 players, now it's 17 of 40. So no matter what, any team in the country is going to have a bigger number that they're trying to replace because now there's more roster spots. And that was partially done because after COVID and after Major League Baseball reduced the draft class size, players are staying in college longer. And then with this whole COVID eligibility thing still going on, they're trying to compensate for that in roster size and not too many kids not having a spot. I think he'll be here to stay because why not? Extra bodies is great, and unfortunately there's injuries. But yeah, so they're only returning 17 to 40 players. They're only returning 4 guys who appeared in more than 30 games, only 2 guys who appeared in over 50 games. So if you just do the math and look at the roster, both of your catchers are gone, your first baseman's gone, your second baseman's gone, your third baseman's gone, your center fielder's gone, and your everyday DH is gone. So that's your offense. So and all those guys all those positions I just mentioned appeared in 45 plus games, minus Shane Sardashny, who only appeared in 41 because of his injury. Pitchers, Luke Malone, your Friday night starter, he's gone. Simon Miller, your everyday closer, everyday middle reliever coming in the 5th inning and try to go 5 innings, he's gone. And then even a couple kind of mid-tier relievers, setup men like Daniel Schaefer, like he's gone. What does that look like stat-wise? Last year the team posted a 5.707 ERA. They're only returning 2 guys whose ERA was under 5. And the 2018 average was like 4.88 for NCAA. They haven't really done a more recent one, but that shows that you're already setting the metric above the average, and you only have 2 guys last year who posted an ERA below that average. So you definitely need a little more consistency out of the guys returning. You're only bringing back 5 guys who threw more than 30 innings last year, and so like you need longer innings out of those guys so you're not burning those arms. And I think that was part of it too. Like we saw towards the end of last year, a lot of home runs given up, a lot of hard hits given up. At the plate, power wise, 78 home runs last year. You only have 17 home runs returning. Like Taylor Smith, last year's everyday DH, he hit 17 home runs by himself last year. So what you're bringing back is what one guy hit last year. And then RBIs, you hit 394 RBIs and you're only bringing 133 back, 433 runs and only 144 returning. Now, some of that is going to happen with how many guys you lost, but it begs the question. And I think we kind of saw this with the conference preview from D1baseball.com. There's some uncertainty there. And, he brought in a lot of guys from the JUCO ranks. One guy from a Power 5 school, but there's going to be some big shoes to fill. And, we're recording this on Monday night. Tomorrow is media day. That's one thing I'm looking forward to asking Coach Hallmark and getting his thoughts is, hey, who outside of Matt King and Caleb Hill, who are you expecting to step up and fill those shoes, and where are you going to get your power from? Because baseball's too hard to just rely on the small ball for 56 games when you got ECU, Charlotte, and some other teams coming to town on the weekends.
Dan, that was a pretty sobering realization of how much this roster has turned over. I truly had no idea. I mean, I follow the program pretty close, and
it was crazy.
75% of production in a lot of the departments. I mean, wow. That's a big turnover. And again, it's like the baseball program paralleling the football program to a degree, right? With this huge turnaround going into this season, and you lose so much veteran leadership, and now you kind of got to see where the pieces fall and which young guys are going to step up. Dan, you mentioned some of the talent in the AAC there at the end. You talked about going up against the ECU, going up against the Charlotte, going up against Memphis. Let's talk about the new American Athletic Conference for UTSA baseball, their first year in the AAC.
Yeah, so I mean, moving into the AAC, and it's interesting because, outside of kind of the big dogs, the perennial favorites, ECU, a lot of the teams that are kind of right there with, like, in the mix are teams that we're already very familiar with. Charlotte is right there. FAU is someone to watch. And there's some surprise teams as well. So the conference preview came out, and from D1 baseball, they were picked 4th to finish in the conference. In the coaches poll, in the American coaches poll, they were picked 3rd. And D1 baseball, it was behind ECU, Charlotte, and Memphis. Memphis was the one that I was a little surprised about, just because as of late, like they haven't been that great. Like 2017 was the last time they finished above 500, and they were just 30 and 29. Last year they were right at 500, and they've got a lot of similarities as UTSA. Like they went heavy on the portal this year, bringing in 13 players. They're trying to improve their pitching. They lost their ace and their closer. Um, very similar to UTSA. They do have a new head coach. So I think if I'm looking at it, how maybe the guys at D1 baseball are looking at it, like Memphis is a team that on paper they look like in the same situation as UTSA, but they're kind of like the fresh start team. So it's like, well, they're going to turn things around. Whereas maybe, and this is a little bit of putting ourselves into their shoes, maybe they're looking at UTSA as like, can UTSA really get it done? Like, can they really win when it counts? The last, they lost the heartbreaker to La Tech 2 years ago. They had the disappointing 0-2 tournament last year, and they faltered at the end of the season as well. Whereas Memphis is kind of like they're doing all the same things as UTSA, but they've been bad. So it's time that they turn the leaf, kind of similar to that leaf that UTSA turned a couple years ago. And so that's the only reason why I can think that Memphis might have been picked ahead of UTSA by D1 baseball.
Considering how much turnover UTSA's roster is experiencing, do you agree, Dan, with that fourth place pick?
Yeah, I mean, look, you have a team like ECU that goes to the regionals almost every year. I mean, they're starting the season the highest ranked mid-major at number 11. People are picking them for Omaha. They've never made it to Omaha as a program, so they've got their own goals and everything. And so, yeah, like being picked third or fourth, depending on where you're looking, when you look at ECU and then even Charlotte, like Charlotte's another team that they kind of get the benefit of the doubt, and listeners can see like, okay, you do things like you win conference tournaments, you do things like go to regionals, and you get the benefit of the doubt from the experts. And when you're because Charlotte's turning over a lot of players too. They have the most newcomers out of anyone, maybe except Wichita, because they turned over their entire like program in history, it seemed like. But Charlotte's bringing in 29 new players out of 40.
Wow.
So 6 more than UTSA. Mm-hmm. They've got a very tough non-conference schedule this year, but last year they knocked UTSA out of the tournament. They went on to beat DBU, and that was the only way they were going to go, was winning the tournament. And then on top of that, they go make the regional final. So, that's just how it is. And I think when you've got so many programs and you're not the big dogs like the Big 12 and the SEC, you kind of just look at the programs that prove themselves year in and year out. And unfortunately, like the last couple of years, UTSA has fallen short of that, where Charlotte has stepped up to the plate and they put everything together. Like they finished the season 29 and 25, but then they went on a 7-3 postseason run that included a conference championship and a regional final. So I think I posted on Twitter or tweeted it. It's probably fair. It's probably fair that the experts are a little uncertain about UTSA, and I think fourth is a very fair assessment. Maybe third, maybe tied with Memphis. The Memphis one surprises me a little bit, but UTSA is going to go there in April and play them in a series, and that's who cares what's on paper at that point? You just got to go beat the teams, right?
Right.
As we've done all of our kind of season preview podcasts for all the different sports that have moved into the AAC, over the past 6 months or whatever it's been, almost across the board, everyone that we've talked to and ourselves even have talked about how much of a jump it is to go from Conference USA to the American. But Conference USA baseball was a little different than most sports in that it really was a borderline power conference. I mean, I remember there was one year, I think 4 different schools got bids to regionals. How would you compare the 2023 Conference USA kind of lineup versus the 2024 AAC lineup? And do you see it as a sizable jump or not?
I would see it pretty even. Like you've got that kind of that one team that's kind of in their own tier a little bit. ECU more than DBU, and then you kind of got that next tier of like, here's our favorites. Like last year was Charlotte, FAU, and UTSA. This year it's Charlotte, UTSA, Memphis, and FAU. FAU's right there as well. So honestly, I'd see it as like the same comparison. Um, you've got the one team that's going to be, and the one thing that I like about this year is, last year UTSA didn't play DBU until the second to last weekend of the season, of the regular season. So all season it was kind of building to that climax of DBU versus UTSA. Like UTSA drops a game in a series, DBU drops a game in a series, and then UTSA kind of controlled their own destiny at the end there. Whereas this year you get ECU right away, so that's good because you get the favorites right away. But what's hard about that is, depending on how that series goes, now, like let's say if they lose that series against ECU and maybe win one game, or only win one game rather, now the whole regular season you're just like a couple games behind ECU, and you're hoping that they drop games somewhere else, and then you're trying to pick one up yourself. So as a conference as a whole, especially with like Charlotte and FAU coming over with them, I think it's very similar to Conference USA. But again, it's hard because in D1 baseball's projection, they only projected ECU and Charlotte as going to regionals. So only two teams. They only projected a two-team conference bid. And so
yeah, definitely not the
some
step up we've
opportunities.
seen for basketball and football and all that. Tennis, all of it. Are there I believe there's some schools in the AAC that don't sponsor baseball. Obviously North Texas came with us and they don't have baseball. Are you aware of any others that are football schools but don't have baseball?
I think probably just North Texas. Well, does Tulsa have baseball? I don't think Tulsa
I
has
don't know.
baseball.
I know Army's not going
Um,
to play baseball in the American, but they wouldn't be in this year anyways.
yeah, so looking at it right now, I don't see Tulsa on the list. I see Wichita, which obviously we know they don't have football.
Right.
So yeah, it looks like Tulsa and Temple. I don't see
Mm.
Temple,
Hmm.
and that's hard. Being in a northern school, especially the academia and everything. Like,
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
don't I
like
don't know if many
Minnesota,
listeners realize
yeah.
a lot of northern schools, even like power programs like Notre Dame and Michigan, they're on the road the whole month of February. It's like they do like a rodeo tour almost to make a Spurs comparison. But
Yeah.
these are some of the most well-funded programs in the sport, and I think that makes it tough, for them to compete with the SEC and the Big 12 schools. Yeah,
Yeah, that's like Minnesota. Like they spend their first 2 months usually playing indoors. It was the Metrodome, now it's US Bank Stadium. And US Bank, where the Vikings play, they're returfing their fields. So Minnesota's going to spend the first 2 months on the road.
it's crazy.
And
Wow.
that's just, I mean, that's brutal. So
Well, speaking of road trips, Dan, what do you think about the schedule this year? What are some of the matchups that you like? What are some of the matchups you have circled? What's some of the matchups you're anxious, a little apprehensive about?
well, so I'm chuckling because it kind of went viral a little bit. So the precursor to UTSA's uh modifications, below ground,
Mm.
undercover modifications to the bird bath. Right before that kind of went public, ECU Barstool was dragging UTSA baseball on Twitter, and I kind of got on there and was like, hey, like the last time I checked, it's still 60 feet 6 inches to home base and or to home plate and 90 feet around the base pad. So I'm
Hell
definitely
yeah.
worried about that ECU series. I mean it's gonna be rocking and rolling, and I'm hoping the home field advantage, the magicalness of the bird bath kicks in. But worried about that one because one, it's going to be a big test of like how UTSA stacks up against the top of the American Athletic, but also two, like I mentioned, if that series doesn't go well, now you're catching up the entire rest of the conference schedule. Um, so that's definitely one that I'm excited about. I really wanted to go to the jungle and go to Greenville, but maybe next year. But I'm excited that they're coming here, and I think what better way to kind of test your mettle than starting against the favorites to open your new time in the conference, right? Kind of prove your worth. But other home games that are excited. I mean, Grand Canyon's coming down early March. They're projected to win the WAC this year. They've always got a good team. You know, year in and year out, the home and away with Texas State. Um, those looking to travel, they're playing Tulane in New Orleans Easter weekend. So if you want to go back to New Orleans, you know, I know the Anzalduas are big New Orleans people. I was hanging out with them uh, at the Tulane game, and they were telling us how much they love New Orleans. So I did just find out that Jenna doesn't really like baseball. Only Andy does, but maybe
At
they can
this
make,
point, Roadrunner fans are spending half of their holidays in New Orleans.
Yeah, all the big ones, right?
Yeah,
we need to make sure basketball gets scheduled during Mardi Gras next year.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, a lot of good games to catch at the Bird Bath. I mean, good teams coming in. You know, I mentioned East Carolina already. Charlotte's coming to San Antonio early April. And then for Houston alumni, I know you guys mentioned this on the Domies, but we got the weekend tournament in Sugarland, the second weekend of the season, and a weekend series at Rice. And then after the Sugarland series, a Tuesday game at Houston. So 7 games in the Houston area this season. So a lot of opportunity for Houston fans to catch the Roadrunners.
Yeah, it'll be my highest number of games attended since I was in college, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm excited.
Nice. That's right. Sugar Lake Classic's going to be epic.
Dan, earlier you mentioned, that not a lot of guys are returning on the roster, and you were looking forward to asking coach, where do you think you're going to get your veteran leadership this year? So knowing that you're going to ask that question tomorrow, what's your educated guess for some of the names that, we're going to return from last year that might be stepping into bigger roles or maybe just have more of a face, as far as leadership goes?
Yeah, I mean, so obviously, last year's newcomer, Caleb Hill, he's looking to have a big final year. Mentioning Matt King, he's moving over to third base. And I wasn't worried about it, and I even joked with him about this they had a little autograph session at the basketball game on Saturday. I said, hey, I wasn't worried about you moving to third base, but I'm glad that the experts see it too, because he made the top 50 list for third baseman. So, Matt's gonna be a junior now, and he doesn't always have a lot of power, but I mean, hits in the gap, he's got a lot of speed. So look for a lot of doubles and triples out of Matt. But as far as like newcomers having power, I mean, one guy, kind of a utility guy, maybe third base, Mark Henning, he looked good through the fall. He's real tall, got a real good build, a real good swing, and I'm curious to see. The fall is hard because these new faces come in and you don't really know, they're not wearing their jerseys for the scrimmages, so you don't really know whose number is who. But this Mason Lytle really intrigues me. And he's got an interesting story. He's from Pearland, Texas. I think he went the JUCO route first and then went up to Oregon and had some injuries, and now he's back here kind of closer to his home. So he's one that I've heard good things about him throughout the fall. And I'm excited to kind of hopefully get some thoughts from him and about him tomorrow and see what he offers. I've heard that he might step into center field, and big shoes to fill with Shane Sardashny holding that down the past 2 seasons. But that's one I'm really excited for. And then kind of the middle infield duo, where I don't even know if they've really decided yet what it's going to be, but you've got Zane Spin, a Temple guy, and Hector Rodriguez from Galveston, kind of battling out. Like, one will play short, one will play second. And I followed Hector throughout the summer when he was playing with the Seguin River Monsters, and he had a real good summer with them. So I think he's gonna have a real good bat. And then even another guy that I wasn't, like, to be honest, wasn't really on my radar, but then reading the preview from D1 Baseball made the freshman watch list, Tanner Seaver, kind of an infield guy. So I'm curious to see where he might plug and play. And I could really see, like, this is one thing I also want to talk to Coach Hallmark about and kind of see how candid he'll be. But, last year I already mentioned, had a lot of guys. You basically had your entire infield were your everyday starters. And I'm curious if Coach Hallmark and his staff are going to use a little more plug and play throughout the first month of the season and kind of use some of those, I don't want to say easier matchups, but some of those more favorable matchups, and use that to kind of mess around with the lineup a little bit. Like Matt King's going to play third base. Caleb Hill's going to play left field. Your catchers are your catchers, of course, but the other guys, curious to see how they fit into place and what Coach Hallmark and his staff does. And then another one too, I don't want to leave him off, but sophomore Ty Odom. Ty was tearing it up last year as a freshman and unfortunately had some back issues and some injuries and had to miss the rest of the regular season. And that was when all within like a 4-day span, Dash went down, Isaiah Walker went down, and Ty went down. So you lose 3 outfielders in 4 games. Like that's tough. So I'm excited to see how Ty looks, and I think he's healthy. I hope he's healthy, and because he's got a really good bat too. Not necessarily the power, but hitting in the gap and a lot of extra base hits.
Dan, I'm excited about those guys. That sounds great. You didn't name a single pitcher though. Now I'm worried.
Oh, well, and that's my bad too. Okay, so I thought we were just talking about offense. I apologize.
Oh, okay. Thank God.
No,
Thank God.
Yeah.
My heart was pounding out of my chest.
No. And that is what's interesting, right? So like thinking back to what I mentioned about guys returning, we lost all those pieces from the offense. You're returning a lot of pitchers, a very veteran staff, but there's some consistency things there, right? Like there's some guys that, like Drake Smith and Yuli, they were lights out at times, and then it seemed like they'd hit a certain point in the inning where all of a sudden the wheels would kind of fall off. So I'm looking for more consistency out of them. Guys that I'm excited about. Ryan Ward, he's a senior. I think he actually just started graduate school this semester, but San Antonio kid, had a really good summer, played up in the brand new or newer MLB draft league. Test to board of trustee member Ray Redding, see if he's listening or not. A little inside joke there about the MLB draft league. But yeah, Ryan had a great summer playing up there in a competitive league, and he had a really good fall. He was kind of one of the guys that was thrown every weekend, and the fall ball World Series had a really good outing. So definitely need like Ryan's like when he's throwing strikes, he's lights out and he's got great movement on the ball. It's just sometimes he can get a little inconsistent with the walks, and he knows that, of course, and that's one thing he's been working hard on. But then the other one too, freshman Robert Orlowski, and he kind of made headlines before he even got to school by getting drafted by the Boston Red Sox over the summer, and got drafted in the 20th round, so he didn't sign, came to college, came to UTSA. I really want to know his story just because he's from Idaho. So I want to know like what got him down here, how do you find out about UTSA, like what kind of relationship he has with the coaches. Talked to his mom in the fall at the Fall Ball World Series, and like his parents they already moved down here and they're already living in New Braunfels, Canyon Lake area to be closer to him and watch him play baseball. So really good stuff out of him. Braylon Owens is another one, had a really good summer. And Jared, we've talked about this, offline and the Texas Collegiate League, sometimes it can be hit and miss, and some years it's better than others competitive wise, but regardless, like you want to see guys have good outings. And so Braylon's someone, he had a really good summer, made headlines for some of his outings. And then of course, like the guy that I'm kind of thinking is going to step into the closer role, Ruger Riojas, freshman last year, had a really good season. Got a little heavy on the home run ball. That was kind of something that he struggled with at times last year. But if he can clean that up, I mean, he was on pace to set the freshman record for opponent's batting average. And a really low number on that, and still finished with a good number. But looking for a big year out of Ruger, and definitely see him kind of coming out of the bullpen as like either the setup man or the closer.
Do you think a sport like baseball, where everything is so isolated, a lot more individually weighted, each and every single at bat, right, every pitch, is it maybe easier for a team to become cohesive in a quicker amount of time with so much transition and turnover on a roster versus a sport like football, having so much turnover on a roster, but so much more coordination needed on a snap by snap basis between everybody. Do you think that these guys can gel quickly and early on in the season? By the time conference play gets here, these guys are playing together and looking like a cohesive unit.
Yeah, I think they definitely can. One of the interesting things about that is, with Matt King moving over to third base, in some ways, I don't want to say it's good, but in some ways, you kind of have like two new guys at shortstop and second base, so they can form their own type of chemistry. Whereas, like the past two seasons, Matt had Leighton Berry on the other side of him, and so Matt and Leighton had gotten really familiar, like what we're talking about. So now, like I think Matt is moving over to third because that just helps make the lineup better. And you've got some really solid pieces at shortstop and second base, but now those guys can kind of form their chemistry. But at the same time, like you definitely have to figure it out because maybe it's not as fast paced as football, but when that ball gets hit, you've got to know the 6 or 7 different situations for where you're throwing it and in what situation are you going to second with it and what situation are you going to first, depending on how hard is it hit. Are you going home? Are you going to second? What have you? And for the outfield, I think there's going to be, Caleb Hill is going to have to, even though he's over and left, he's not the center of the outfield. He's going to have his leadership and his veterancy with knowing that field and everything and helping the two guys to the right of him because they've got to know, hey, like depending on where this ball is hit, is that Caleb's ball? Does Caleb have the range to get that, or does somebody like Mason Lytle, Aiden Bauman, Isaiah Walker, Ty Odom, do they need to kind of make an effort for it as well? So definitely learning like what guys' ranges are, what guys' speeds are. But of course, like the thing with baseball is like football, like you can scrimmage and everything, and that helps. But baseball, like they just spend an entire fall season intra squad playing against each other. So they've probably figured a lot of that out, and they probably already have a good idea of like, if this ball is hit here, can Mason get to it? Can Caleb get to it? Do I need to come behind him, and how can I help him out?
That pitcher catcher relationship is really crucial as well. I mean, you see it in the MLB where they'll keep a second catcher on the active lineup just because one of the ace pitchers likes to work with that catcher because the way that they frame the pitches or whatever. So it's always an interesting combination to watch.
Yeah, and I think in college, like there's a little. I think like during the games, at least at UTSA, the coaches are a little more involved in that. Like Coach Butler, I think he calls a lot of the pitches and does a lot of the managing. And I saw through the fall they were using some new technology. It looked like they were trying to use the wristband and kind of like almost keypad.
The catcher that wears it, right?
Yeah, or like the pitcher's wearing it too, so like Coach Butler can send a signal out there, the catcher can send a signal out there. And I think last year they were using more of the earpiece. So like they'd radio something to Josh or Sammy, and then they'd call something. And that too, like it kind of seems like right now Lorenzo Molesi, who is from Italy, a native Italian, he's kind of the last time I heard he was kind of the main guy or the number one starter for the catching position. But a lot of depth there, and hopefully they can keep those guys' legs fresh. And the thing about like it was interesting because last year you never saw Taylor Smith play anything other than DH, and even when there was some injuries, like he stayed in the DH role. So I'm not sure what his defense was like, but if they can get because like Lorenzo, I think he's a switch hitter, and so if they can get some of those guys into a DH role and not have your DH have to be almost like a platoon, then that should give some more flexibility to the lineup as well.
I was about to bring up Taylor actually because you mentioned Ray, and last year Ray just kept saying, "Hey man, look out for Taylor Smith, Taylor Smith, Taylor Smith," and he wasn't doing anything like the first month of the season, and then boom, he was just hitting home run like every other game, So Ray knows his stuff, and Ray definitely hit our line. Let us know who the next Taylor Smith is for this season.
Yeah, and that was like it. It was funny because we had the media day right before the conference tournament last year, and I brought up Taylor to Coach Hallmark because of that fact of the home runs and the slow start, and then he was one home run shy of tying the school record, two of having it outright. And I asked him kind of like what changed with his power. And it was funny because Coach Hallmark's like, well, I don't know how in depth you want to get with it, but blah blah blah. I was like, well, Coach, I got 3 hours. Let's talk ball. Like, I mean, obviously he had a lot going on, but he's like, he mentioned twice. He's like, I don't know how technical you want to get. I was like, I want to get as technical as we can. Like, let's go. But yeah, I mean, Ray knows ball, and I'm excited to watch I'm excited to watch some games with him this season.
The thing about the armbands and the earpiece has me feeling good that UTSA is a top ranked cybersecurity school. I don't want to see any Apple Watches out there on the base pass from the opponents. Let's keep that under wraps.
Yeah, well, and Rice, we won't get into all of it on this podcast, but Rice had some nefarious things going on last year at Reckling Park in the regular season series, and there was some funny business going on, and
okay,
yeah, there was some iPads involved, and
hey,
I don't want to get too accusatory
because
I wasn't there, but I heard there was some funny business and some weird things going on last year.
That's just how baseball is played in the city of Houston, brother.
We're gonna lose subscribers.
Hey man.
Listen, I don't need Coach Cruz Jr. coming after me with I do this part time. Like, let me just say, like, these thoughts do not reflect the thoughts and opinions of UTSA baseball. This is Dan Nerdall's own conspiracy tinfoil hat conspiracy.
Yeah.
Don't come after me with a slander and whatever, Coach Cruz.
Man, Dan's learning the business quickly. I love it.
Yeah, I love it.
Well, do we want to transition and talk about some of the facility upgrades coming up in the Birdbath?
Yeah, let me just real quick before we do that, let me give my prediction.
Let's hear it.
Oh wow.
So I want to preface this with I learned my lesson last year in how difficult it is to predict the conference tournament. And obviously baseball is a different sport than football, and anything can happen. I mean, last year for the American Athletic, Tulane was like, I don't even know. They were like 15 games below 500 last year, and they won the whole tournament and went to regionals and everything. So I'm hoping that UTSA has a better conference tournament, but regular season, into the postseason, I think they find their 40 wins. I think they finish. I think they finish top 3 in the conference. I don't think that they lose a series to both Charlotte and ECU. I think they take one of those series.
Okay.
And and they have to. This is the other thing I want to touch on too. Kind of getting back to last year, they have to clean up the Tuesday slate. Last year they started off 5-0 on their midweek games, and they went 2-6 the rest of the way. So they went 7-6. And the hard thing is, most of those games they lost were to teams that just crushed their RPI, like A&M Corpus Christi, UT RGV, Incarnate Word. The Sam Houston loss, it was a bad loss, but RPI wise, it wasn't terrible. But they lost a lot of midweek games that they
that's the real reason they got snubbed. I felt very strongly about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I wouldn't even call last year a snub. Because it's just hard with the 64 team tournament and 30 spots going to the conference champs. And so many going to the SEC schools.
Right, SEC is going to get half of them.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't even call, and I don't even know if the guys would call last year a snub. I mean, I think their RPI finished at 70 something. Like, if you're not getting an RPI of 70 something and getting in that large bid, especially as a mid major, you're just not getting the benefit of the doubt with that.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised to hear you predict the 40 win total this year. Do you think it's a weaker out of conference slate this year, or you just think the team is going to be improved over last year?
I think they're just going to figure it out. I mean, you look at last year and they only got 38 wins, but so many of those games could easily be flipped. And this year, like UT Arlington, like we can wrap up at the end and kind of touch on that just a little bit, because that's coming this weekend. And I did, it's great timing. I did today, just in my student email, got an email ad talking about coming out to watch games at the Birdbath this weekend and use your student ticket. I've got my chairback seats, but it was nice to see the official confirmation from the UTSA Athletics that the games will be at the Birdbath this weekend and not be moved otherwise, as some people may have been hearing. But I think it's about the same non-conference schedule as last year, but a little more opportunity for if they can take the series from Grand Canyon, that will definitely help in the RPI. And then if they can do well against Texas State again and Houston, that will help. So it's pretty similar to last year. So I think they're just gonna figure out that Tuesday slate a little better, and then having a better conference tournament as well will help them get those 40 wins.
I like the way that sounds, Dan. I really do. I think that team can do it. So yeah, let's get into facilities talk, man. I mean, there's been a whole lot of news around UTSA's bird bath, and you were one of the first people to drive by the baseball.
Boots on the ground, baby.
The baseball field. It was getting, yeah, I mean, Dan literally texted Jared and I, like, oh, gosh, it's probably like 8:45 or 9:45 in the morning, something like that. And hey, there's something going on at Roadrunner Field. And since then, more stuff there's been more developments. We even had a little bit of chaos unfold last week or 2 weeks ago, I suppose, with the field. So yeah, bring everybody up to speed on the improvements and sort of the journey that those improvements have been on.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously the big one that can no longer be hidden, and that's what's funny about some of these improvements. Like, and y'all acknowledge this on the main Audible podcast feed, that the athletic department even still has been pretty quiet about what's been going on, and not a lot has been put out there. Yeah, and you didn't really see more acknowledgement about it until third party companies started like posting their own thoughts about it. And so like they were improving the audio television technology for the games to be on ESPN Plus, and something with like, and look to Jerry Briggs's article on the JB replay for more quotes and specifics on that. But something with the pipes and everything, there was a big water burst, and basically a water hazard or a literal bird bath developed in the middle of center field. And Sports Field Solutions got out there and they cleaned it up and they laid some new sod. And so also you see this big post from like Sports Field Solutions saying like, in time of need. And it's like, well, the athletic department can't hide it now. Or, the team had to go practice at some high school fields. And one of the high schools was like, hey, thanks so much for coming out, UTSA. Anytime you need some help. And so like when other parties are involved, it's a little harder to hide it. But yeah, like the brand new premium seating behind home plate and 371 chairbacks, and that helped contribute to setting a new attendance record for season tickets sold. And I just checked today, and they sold about 206 of those chairbacks. So there's still 100 and I'm bad at simple math, but 150, 156, 160 chairbacks left.
165, yeah.
165, thank you. So still some options available out there to get some good chairbacks, and not have to bring your own and not lug your own lawn chair in there. But yeah, I mean, it looks really good. And I kind of jabbed a little bit when they were talking about the season ticket sales, and I posted and it even got Mongo's attention. Looking forward to seeing Mongo out of the bird bath again this season. But I posted the Field of Dreams quote when James Earl Jones are saying, people will come, Ray. So it's like, hey, you make improvements and people will back up. They'll put their money where their mouth is and show up. So that's probably the biggest one.
I have friends know they were not going to go to more than 2 games this season, still bought a ticket just to show their support for the facility investment.
Well, that's exactly why it's so strange for the athletics department to not publicize improvements well before they even break ground on them. They should be talking about that, hyping that up, doing little teases and releases and renderings. I mean, something. And I mean, hell, they're probably, if they do that, they're probably a lot closer to that 371 number sold today than they are just the 206. I guarantee it. So it's just weird. It's weird seeing that dynamic. And then, yeah, you mentioned third-party companies are the ones that are breaking news for Roadrunner fans rather than actual UTSA. And, if you tell us you're working on the field and making improvements, no one's freaking out whenever you have some construction issues, but Roadrunner fans just see him. I think Pat Hallmark called it a waterbed whenever he walked on the field. Everyone was like, what the hell is going on? It's supposed to start in 2 weeks. What? So, yeah, I mean, these sort of things, I think transparency is good for a lot of reasons. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm really curious. Like, not only like just the lack of details, we never saw a mock-up or anything like that. It's been hard to get any updates or really understand what the plans were. But then they started the construction so close to the season. So like I wonder like if they just money fell from the sky, after 2024 started, they're just like, hey, what can we do with X amount of money in a month, and who knows? It's been really fascinating. But appreciate Dan out there getting us updates. JJ stopped by, had some great shots. And for me personally, my theory was like they didn't want to make a big deal out of it because they didn't want to set people's expectations too high and then people would be disappointed. But to be honest with you guys, this is the biggest playing facility upgrade that has happened at UTSA since Park West opened when I was in college, like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
It's really monumental, and I'm shocked and impressed and happy about how much better it's looking right now. And they're not even done yet. It could turn out to be better. And I like the approach where they're it seems like they're doing this modular upgrade in place plan. New press box, new chair backs. Maybe they build a real concession stand soon, expand the bathrooms, actually dig out the dugouts so they're underground and, go to team room and stuff like that. And they can kind of do that iteratively, over the next 5 years or whatever. So I really like that plan of kind of building a ballpark around the playing field that's already there.
That's cool.
Yeah, that was the big, like any alumni I've talked to, that's the overall consensus is leave it where it is. It's a great place to play baseball. It's a great backdrop. It's a romantic backdrop for a college baseball field facility. I mean, I remember last year I went to the Roadrunner game at SFA, and a really romantic setting as well. You've got the piney woods behind you. You've got these youth kind of like little league fields surrounding the college Division I college field, but at the same time it's 10, 15, 20 minutes off campus, and I saw very little college students there. And for a midweek game, you had that same game at Roadrunner Field, and you're getting off campus, and there's housing over there, and there's going to be more housing over there, and students park over there for commuter parking when the other ones fill up. And it's like, hey, like you're walking out of your afternoon class and the 6 o'clock game is starting, and like I'll sit and watch 5, 6, 7 innings. Why not?
I mean, it's quite literally smack dab in the middle of campus, and I just think that's rare for any sports facility at any university, for something to be quite literally in the middle of a campus and not on the outskirt on the edge or something like that.
Especially next to the residential halls.
Yeah. It really is gorgeous to look at.
Yeah, and who knows? Maybe ECU has a slush fund, and when they come down, they'll throw some money at UTSA, because that was the other thing. Giving a little hat tip towards the Patreon episode we just had where I interviewed Mickey Perez, and one thing he remembered from the Stanford game, this would have been 2-3 seasons ago, however you look at it. But Braden Montgomery, who now is playing for Texas A&M, and Mickey was saying he was going to the bathroom, and Braden Montgomery walked in and just kind of chuckled and just laughed, because he's like, Braden Montgomery probably hasn't gone to the bathroom with fans since Little League, and now here he is, the fifth inning of a game, going to the latrine, going to the bathroom, and you got some fans in there. I mean, hey, maybe that's the best way to get some autographs. Just wait outside the bathroom. Get Trey Savage's autograph and everything, but
it happens.
Wait outside the bathroom, not in it. We've covered this on the podcast before.
That's why I specified. Wait outside the bathroom. Don't go.
Dan, I know there's a document out there that outlines like the specifications you have to meet to host a regional. I really hope like dedicated player bathrooms is on that. I don't know if you've confirmed that or not, but that needs to happen.
Yeah, and I think, and I've said this to several people. I think the best thing that could happen, and I want to phrase this the right way, and we can edit this out if I butcher this, but the best thing that could possibly happen towards speed tracking upgrades is have UTSA be in a position where they could realistically hold a regional on campus, and it either move to Nelson Wolff or they be denied of it. And I think that'd be a very eye-opening realization for the administration to realize, okay, now, and I was talking to Mickey about this. I was saying, like, it's hard because in college sports today, if you have to every single season have the pressure of 40 plus wins and you never have the committee's like approval to host a regional, you're always going to be working from the bottom up. And that's a lot of pressure on a coach to constantly have to have that year in and year out. You need the resources to be able to. And Coach Hallmark's done an incredible job, and his staff, they've done an incredible job getting great baseball. I mean, he got to the last 3 seasons, he's won 98 games. And so very successful. He's got the highest winning percentage in program history at 600. And that's with he's done that with what he has. And so and we're not talking this is no new conversation to those, deep involved in UTSA athletics.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean the whole aspect of being overly qualified to host a regional and not getting it, that's worked for Sun Belt teams before, where they had, a 45 win season or whatever, or maybe even won the Sun Belt championship, weren't able to host, and then 2 years later they've got massive upgrades to the ballpark. So hope it doesn't come to that, but it's the proof is in the pudding, and I think everyone wins if that, because then we get to go to regional, so wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. Well, cool, Dan. To wrap us up, what can the listeners expect from your coverage from around the Bird Bath this year?
Yeah, we're still working out the kinks, but I think the main thing that we've agreed on and kind of decided is, and this is what's so crazy. It's crazy even to say like our second annual baseball preview, right? Because last year, like I reached out in the fall and we kind of threw it together with a couple articles here and there and didn't really know what to expect. And I kind of thought like, hey, as long as one more person than just my mom listens, it's a success. But it seems like people enjoyed it last year, and I appreciate that. I'm humbled by that. But we want to bring you more coverage and more content. So one thing that I'm kind of looking at rolling out is, last year I did the blogs, and I thought they got a little convoluted sometimes, a little water, like just too much coverage with trying to cover 4 games. And then by the time it comes out on Monday, like you're talking about the Tuesday game, that was 6 days ago. So doing kind of like a Patreon exclusive episode where we, preview or do a reaction to the Tuesday game, the midweek game. Try to bring in a guest most weeks and get kind of that expert pundit knowledge from an alumni, from maybe someone at a different outlet, maybe someone that's also covering the Roadrunners, and just have a little dialogue. Not being a total ripoff of what JJ and Greg Luca do, but kind of that same mindset where you're just discussing the game, getting the thoughts, kind of what was what went well, what didn't. Maybe having that over on Patreon, and then trying to do more weekly previews so that we're not covering 2 weekends at a time, and you kind of forget like what's happening by the time, and then you got to go back and listen to the episode and everything. So splitting up the podcast a little bit, having like a Patreon exclusive and a main feed, but more coverage and bringing more content to the listeners. Still doing Where Are They Nows throughout the month or each month, and have those kind of locked up behind the Patreon. And then we're still trying to work out the blogs and what we want that to look like. But basically from Alamo Audible and on that outlet, more coverage. And then for myself, like I'll probably still try to do the live tweeting. I think people really like that. I know we're moving over to ESPN Plus now. So if it seems like more people are able to watch the games and stuff, and the live tweeting, like at the rate that I was pumping it out at, if that's not needed, then maybe just try to do the highlights like during the game, like still do some live tweeting, but not as much. But then I'm also hoping to get my family out there more. I've got our son he's about to be, he just turned 5 months. So by the time the season starts, he'll be right about 6 months. So gonna try to get, my wife and 2 kids out there more often. And obviously those games, it's gonna be a little harder for me to to live tweet every single at bat or do a screenshot of like the entire inning recap and everything, but still going to be on the Twitter and everything. Given that, because I know some people just don't have the opportunity to watch the games and stuff, so want to keep the listeners engaged. So that's kind of a roundabout answer, and that's, I guess, just at the end of the night at 9:30 at night. That's what happens. You kind of word vomit it, but the short answer is more content and more coverage.
That's what the people want. That's all they need to know.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we didn't even really talk much about the move to the ESPN Plus for baseball. I'm hopeful it's going to be a much better product than Conference USA TV, and I'm confident that it will. Carl is going to be the commentator on that. He's been great for every sport. I've seen him cover for UTSA, so I'm really looking forward to watching those broadcasts, and the ability to watch it on your phone from anywhere. Like, you could technically do it with Conference USA TV, but it was never a very seamless process, and you definitely couldn't like cast it to your big screen TV or anything like that. So.
Yeah, it's the accessibility that comes with the ESPN Plus that just makes things so much better for a Roadrunner fan.
And I think I read that they ran a fiber line to the baseball field, which makes me wonder how they were doing broadcasts without one on Conference USA TV. But
I think that's what cracked the water line, wasn't it? Was running that fiber,
maybe
running some sort of cable, something like that.
Dan shaking his head, yes, that's confirmation, as much confirmation as I need. But well, and it would be better.
Well, and I don't know enough about AV media and everything to start that conversation. But the one thing I wondered is like, okay, is this something where because they waited later, they were having to go faster and that's why the problem occurred? Or like, would it have occurred regardless? And if it would have occurred regardless, then that brings you back to, well, why'd you wait so long? Because then you gave less time to fix any possible mistakes that just come with construction and digging into the rocky ground of San Antonio, which that just opens the whole trail again of like the facilities and why they waited so long and everything for the upgrades, knowing when the season started. But that's another podcast for another day.
I think anyone who's ever hired a contractor knows that no matter how hard you vet people, how much you pay them, they're probably still going to make a terrible mistake that they've got to fix. So I'm not going to hold that one against them. Good point on the timing.
No, yeah.
Well, awesome, Dan. Thank you so much, not only for sharing your time with us tonight and giving the fans and listeners the season preview, but also for all that you've done. You said like if someone other than your mom listens, that's huge. Obviously, the demand has been there, but I also honestly and earnestly think that you have made people more hardcore baseball fans, which is tremendous, man. And we really can't thank you enough. Not only Adrian and I as co-owners of Alma Audible along with Aaron, but also just as UTSA supporters, man. Your coverage has really taken, I think, fandom to the next level for this program for a lot of people. So thanks again, and we're definitely looking forward to continue to follow the coverage throughout the season.
Yeah, I'm excited. And I mean, you can talk about it as much as you want. At the end of the day, you just got to get out there and play baseball. So, I tweeted just the other day, knowing Coach Hallmark and his staff, they're going to have these guys ready to play and they're going to set the team and the coaching staff's going to set the bar high and they're going to hold them to that. So looking forward to it. And it all gets started in a few days and I'm excited. I'm pumped. Let's go.
Before we send you guys out, just want to say thank you to all of our Patreon subscribers who not only support us here at Alma Audible, but also made Dan our highest earning contributor in Alma Audible history. Very well deserved, very well deserved. If you want to keep supporting us here and get more of Dan's coverage for the 24th season, be sure to go to almaaudible.com and subscribe there to unlock all of our bonus content. So thank you to our Board of Trustees members, which includes Digiteek, John Otwell, Lino Perez of Los Dos Rowdy Tailgating, Gary and Rubin representing the UTSA Bird Gang Tailgate, Ray Redding and Meet Me Apparel, Brandon Grill and the Gray Realty Group, Andy Elizada for Fish and Benefit Solutions, Ian McClendon and Seeker LLC, Brandon Padron, Ryan Squares, Waterman Construction, Javon Townsend, VP of the DFW chapter of the UTSA Alumni Association, UTSA Annual Giving, and Artisan Vapor and CBD. And of course, thank you as well to our board big money donors, Ben Tovar, the Bunch family, Zach Espericueta and the San Antonio Podcast Network, Alejandro Benavides, Dan, Jacob Cavazos, board president of the UTSA Alumni Association, John Nally, Brandon Padron, and Rick Cortez of Rowdy Road Grillers. And last but not least, Home Field Apparel, where you can use discount code UTSA1HOMEFIELD to get 15% off your first order. But thank you guys all so much. I'll see you back next time.